Good afternoon. Welcome to Increasing Outdoor Access for the Military Community, a briefing presented by the Sierra Club Military Outdoors campaign. We first want to start with a land acknowledgement. We greatly acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who still make their homes in our respective states. We also acknowledge the people of African descent who were forcibly removed from their land and separated from their families through kidnapping and enslavement, and pay reverence and respect to them for building this country's infrastructure and economy with no compensation or reparations to date. So yes, thank you. We're excited. This is for this briefing. This has been a culmination of over a year of work. Like I said earlier, this presentation is called Increasing Outdoor Access for the Military Community. This is a report that we have recently released at the end of July, which includes several recommendations for improving outdoor access for the veteran military community all across the country. These recommendations scale from infrastructure improvements to funding programs to awareness campaigns and also interagency collaboration. Next slide, please. So yes, just want to also I need to introduce myself. So my name is Jerry Sevo James. I am the Deputy Campaign Director for the Outdoors for All campaign. I'm also a U.S. Air Force veteran and an Army brat. And then I also will share about my colleagues a little bit that will be presenters as well, and also some of our team members who may not be visible. So that's Sherman Neal, he'll be on camera later. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, combat veteran, and he's the Deputy Campaign Director for Sierra Club's Military Outdoors campaign. Deidre Goodwin, Army brat, and one of our Military Outdoors campaign strategists, and a really amazing person that's helped create the listening sessions, our technical guide, and so many things to make this project come to life. And then we have Simona Ballas from the University of Kentucky's Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky, who it's called CEDIC. CEDIC was our institutional partner that helped us produce the report. And then also not part of the presentation today is Sarah Boker from the University of Kentucky, who helped design our report. So thank you. And what I want to do for the guests right now is if y'all can share where you're from, who you are, and why you're here today in the chat. Thank you. So I just want to give an overview of our campaign. So the Military Outdoors campaign is part of, is one of the components of the Sierra Club's broader Outdoors for All campaign. And OFA, that's our kind of like our acronym, focuses on equitable access to the outdoors, particularly for those that are lacking access to nature and those underrepresented in outdoor creation. We also focus on mitigating the climate crisis and removing barriers to entry and providing equal opportunities for all to connect to nature. And then we have this goal as part of our 2030 goals to cut the nature equity and gap by ensuring an additional 50 million can exercise their human right to connect with outdoors. Next up, I will pass the mic to my esteemed colleague and friend, Sherman Neal, who will give a more of a succinct overview of the Military Outdoors campaign. Sherman?
Appreciate it, Jerry. Good afternoon, good morning, for wherever y'all at today. Again, just reiterating, my name's Sherman Neal. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, attorney, and I'm now the Deputy Campaign Director for the Military Outdoors campaign. I've been in this position for about 7 months at this point in time, so haven't had the opportunity to meet everybody here, but look forward to learning with y'all. So the Military Outdoors campaign, what is our purpose now? It's to cultivate pathways for the military community to connect in nature. And we do that 2 ways primarily. One, through advocacy work, like the work that we're doing here today. And the second is through collaborative partnerships. Generally, those partnerships come through a re-grant program where we've granted nearly $500,000 over the past 3 years to either Sierra Club Military Outdoors chapters, who are persons who are either volunteers or chapters in geographic areas that have signed up to do work specifically with the veteran community, or to VSOs directly themselves. Some of those include Guardian Revival in New York, Alaska's Healing Hearts in Alaska, and other partners in the community that are doing good work out in a diverse set of ways and impacting the military community. So just want to be intentional on what we do and focusing a bit on the word cultivate, because what we're really doing here is creating pathways from the national level to empower other people. And this is an exercise in doing that right now. So appreciate it. Next slide, please. So you may have seen that the Sierra Club Military Outdoors sub-campaign was formed in 2006 formally. In the slide prior. The military outdoors infusion into the work of the Sierra Club has been there since the beginning, essentially. The first executive director, David Brower of the Sierra Club, was actually an Army veteran who brought a lot of lessons learned. Hopefully not all of the lessons learned that she learned up in New York training to go to Italy to fight, but brought those over to the club, and a lot of the leadership and outings and strategy and hip pocket classes and things that go with service that you can bring over that we see infused today through ourselves and our partners is still present. So just wanted to highlight and respect that his service here and the continuing impact that he's had. Thank you. Next slide, please. I'm transferring to Simona at the University of Kentucky to get into some specifics on, the collaborative work that we did together over the past year and some of the results. I think you're on mute, Simona.
Yes, I just noticed this. Thank you, Sherman. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here today. As part of the University of Kentucky, we had the privilege to work with Sierra Club on their project and look at the survey data and listening session and help them with the results, and as well as guide the reporting out and the recommendation process. So during November of 2023 to end of March 2024, there were a series of listening sessions that Sierra Club organized. 3 of them were in person, one of them was online, focusing on women veterans participants, as well as a survey that was out for the military community at large. As a follow-up of these surveys and listening sessions, we ended up having 716 respondents through the survey, representing almost all of United States. I think there were only 2 states that were not represented in terms of responses, and 71 participants in the listening sessions in total. Our role was to analyze this data and identify some of the key recommendations from the survey as well as the listening sessions. And some of those recommendations are around increased access for military community, reduce prices and make more affordable reduce your discounted prices and increase transportation, as well as having one-stop shop for communication, for information about different outdoor activities. And these recommendations from the survey responses are almost a mirror to those from the listening sessions, where we again can identify the same themes that we did through the survey around, again, access for the military outdoors to different venues, awareness of different programs, opportunities, including opportunities for employment and training, and based on this survey and the listening sessions, Sierra Club could put forward some specific recommendations that Jerry is going to go over on the next slides. And Jerry, I'm going to pass this on to you.
Thank you so much, Simona. Yes, like working with University of Kentucky has been a dream. Simona and her team, they took what was raw data and was able to help us transform it into, succinct recommendations. And then what our team did is we took that data analysis and sat down and tried to think, we tried to think about like what does this mean? What are people saying? And what are the programs that can be created or amplified or edited to increase outdoor access? And so I'll provide go back in a little brief backstory. So we have these recommendations are broken down into different buckets: access, awareness, collaboration, and skills training. And these came from an initial data analysis that we did over a year ago with with a fellow named Pepper Phillips that analyzed the federal comment period around. There's a task force for outdoor creation that the VA created, and that has several agencies. And so we analyzed a federal comment period of different comments from different outdoor providers and individuals talking about access to outdoors. So we took that, and what we learned that there's all these different themes, like I said: access, awareness, collaboration, and implementation, skills training, education. And so what I will do is provide a brief overview of each of these buckets and kind of like how we came to them. So the first one that was major from the survey and from our listening sessions was access. There are things, like the financial costs to enter a park. Many veterans are on a fixed income, or veterans have, families. And so there's a barrier of entry to enter a park. There's also limited transportation. There are a lot of veterans that, because of their service, have disabilities and such. And so, may not be able to drive, have increased mobility issues. And then there's a lack of physical accessibility in the space. And that's huge. Whenever our country's public lands infrastructure was created, people were not, thinking about people with disabilities. And so, a significant amount of our trail systems are not accessible. We're talking about, for someone in a chair, someone that needs to use mobility aids, someone that, needs to launch a kayak. And so there's like a lack of infrastructure. And so some of the things that we have talked about or that we have suggest is just by doing that is we want to see our public lands and water sites have more adaptive equipment, things like Moby mats so folks can access the beaches with their chairs, track chairs so that folks that, use mobility aids and wheelchairs can, getting a track chair that has it's like a tank treads and be able to go on trails. We also want to see more wider trails. And we also want to see more partnerships with programs that work with the disabled community. So that's a major focus of ours there. Then, another big thing is funding, and post, during the global war on terrorism, it's popped up a lot of, wilderness and outdoor recreation as a place for healing for veterans in the military community. And so there's been a smorgasbord of different organizations and programs that popped up. But they've kind of left out, or not intentionally per se, but have left out reaching like an underserved environment. And what we've identified as underserved is, our younger veterans, people in like rural communities, vets and military folk in rural communities, women, and then also minority veterans. So these are just some of the things that we have came across. Next slide, please. And then there's also within the VA healthcare system, things like making our VA the healthcare facilities more green, more of a healing space with nature and trails and flowers and things of that sort, to help increase, to help with public health and help with mental and emotional health. So those are some of the recommendations we made around access. Next slide, please. Another thing that we identified, and this was interesting from our listening sessions, and Simona alluded to it earlier, or stated earlier, was a lot of people were not aware of existing programs on the ground. That was a big thing that we learned from the surveys and from our listening sessions, where people just didn't know where to look. And there, like I said, there are tons of programs all across the country. Veterans organizations that lead hikes, veterans organizations that do gardening programs, orgs like our friends at Team River Runner that take veterans out paddling as a way for healing. There's just like a lot of resources. Like there's ski passes and all kinds of things, but there's often not a place to find that information, And so what we are suggesting is develop a more centralized hub where folks can access and learn more about those programs, those facilities where there are accessible trails and equipment. Another big thing too that we've wanted to focus on too was increasing representation of those who are marketed to about these resources. Next slide, please. And then another section or another focus area of ours was collaboration and implementation. Like I just said, a lot of information and resources, it's scattered all across different, federal agencies, state agencies, scattered across the different nonprofit infrastructure. And so we think that the most beneficial thing to do is to have more collaboration amongst those agencies and organizations. And so what that can look like, what that can look like is there is, some kind of office of outdoor creation that's focused on veterans in the military community, that's focused on increasing cooperation among those organizations and such. We also, identified like maybe there's technical assistance that can be provided. There are different orgs like, veteran outdoor access orgs that are being born every other day. There's vets that are like, hey, I want to take my fellow community members out hiking, and they need to know how to get started. How do I do my nonprofit paperwork? How do I create a really good outdoor curriculum or standard, standard SOPs or for doing my programming. And so, by having like, this one-stop shop or this office, there's a way to provide coordination and support at the community level. So, and that's one of the ways that we see collaboration happening. We also want to see more collaboration amongst the agencies. As you all know, many people I know, each of the agencies have different things that they are focused on. But in order to, have more, a better infrastructure for the veteran military community, everyone needs to be, all the agencies should be working together. And so that's why we have suggested, for adding the VA and the DoD, Department of Defense, to the Federal Interagency Council on Outdoor Recreation, which is an entity that is focused on improving that interagency collaboration. Next slide, please. And then finally, another major component was skills training and education. There's a lot of veterans expressed, while we're on the ground, and as I've been in the community, Sherman, and it's been in the community, that folks want to work in the outdoors. It's a rewarding place. It's a fun place, especially after a term enlistment or commission. And so we want to support. We want to support veterans having access to those jobs, and we think that there's organizations that exist, organizational partners that exist, like AREs, which is the Association for Outdoor Recreation and Education. They have an emerging initiative called the Center for Veterans Employment in the Outdoors, which is focused on just that. We also think that by utilizing existing programs like the DoD Skill Bridge program, Transition Assistance Program, the Military Spouse Program, Partnerships Program, we can help support the community to translate their military skills and expertise and backgrounds into positions within the outdoor and conservation community. This is just a brief overview of our recommendations. For the full recommendations, you can read the report where we kind of iron it out line by line. But yeah, thank you so much for thank you. And then next, we're going to have a panel discussion with two esteemed guests. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, JR and Tammy. So JR, you want to go first? Hey, JR, sorry, if you can unmute, we're so sorry.
It's okay. Sorry about that all. Good afternoon. My name is J.R. Hunt. I am, my preferred pronouns are he and him. I am a U.S. Air Force veteran and an outdoor programs coordinator and chapter leader for outdoor programs for veterans with the Minnesota chapter, North Star chapter Sierra Club.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tammy Bartlett, pronouns she, her, hers. And I'm an 8-year Coast Guard veteran and Vice President of Government Affairs for Student Veterans of America. Great to be here.
Thank you so much, Tammy and JR. Like what we brought them today was these folks. They have extensive experience as veterans and within the community and supporting programs. And so we wanted to kind of get their reaction to this kind of like military veteran community outdoor access conversation. So I'll just I'll ask a series of questions, and Tammy and JR, you just go at it, round robin. So first question is, why do you feel outdoor access for the veteran and military community is important?
I'll go first. I think there's always been a connection between the outdoors and healing. Ensuring veterans have unfettered access to nature and that sense of community can go a long way to helping physical and mental traumas. I think a good start to connecting veterans with those outdoor programs was the National Lifetime Pass, the National Parks Lifetime Pass. But I think a lot more can be done. In the state of Minnesota, we're offering free state park passes and regional park passes to our veterans as well. Having said that, there's still a disconnect between the veterans and access to some of these parks because they're not always in transit lines. So I think the next logical step for that is having green spaces in areas where veterans can access, or providing meaningful transportation options for those veterans would be the logical next step for folks to be able to enjoy those spaces and begin to do that healing process.
I would agree. Here in Maryland, we do have state veteran free passes into our state parks. And I think it's not only just the mental health readjustment or healing, but it's also the physical health in healing, giving that sense of competitiveness, or just an understanding that even though I may have injuries, physical and mental, to myself, that I still have the physical and mental capability of being outdoors and engaging with nature, engaging with family and friends while doing so.
Thank you so much. So our next questions,
what are the primary obstacles that y'all feel that are facing veterans in the military community and access in the outdoors?
Tammy, I'll let you go first.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think access, the greatest access would have to be transportation too. Oftentimes, either a rural or urban veteran may not be able to drive themselves, or the distance to a green space might be too far for them to be able to travel themselves or have the capability of doing so. Other obstacles, I think, looking at both physical and mental blocks. Sometimes a physical block can be easily accessible, like you mentioned, Gary, of a kayak launch. A sand beach is a great kayak launch for those who have the ability to do so. For those like myself who have knee injuries and leg injuries, getting that low on a sand beach might be difficult, to where an adaptive kayak launch is something very easily usable for me, and I can easily get out on the water so much smoother than a sand beach. Those mental blocks sometimes are things we have to walk through ourselves, but they may also be an unwillingness to do an event by ourselves. I do prefer to kayak and be out on the water as far as safety with others. So it's just a matter of connecting with others who have that time and availability to go out on the water, and equipment too, the equipment to be out there on the water with me.
I agree with Tammy 100%. The transportation can be a challenge. When I'm running programs in Minnesota, I will actually provide transportation for veterans at in other communities to ensure that I get the folks who want to come to my programming access to those programs. I think equipment can be a barrier as well. There's costs incurred with those things, and just like Tammy said, understanding and knowing how to use that equipment sometimes is, if I want to do something new like stand-up paddle boarding, it might be a challenge that I just don't know how to get on it. And having a community of folks, not necessarily veterans. Sometimes I will get veterans together with folks who are not veterans, but have experience doing the different activities so they can learn from each other and build that larger community as a result of that. So I think those are the two big things that we're doing. Also, one of the things that the report doesn't maybe cover are things like folks with adaptive gear, or folks with emotional support dogs, or providing events for them to know each other as a community and create that sense that they're not the only one out there on this island. So that's what I've tried to do with the programming that I've been running.
Thanks, JR and Tammy. Yeah, JR, to your last point, that's actually something that was talked about in the listening sessions, about that kind of like joy and connection of meeting fellow veterans and having fun in the outdoors. And people did talk about like service animals and service animal, like, hike and meet up and stuff like that. So thank you for calling out.
I've actually got my first service animal hike coming up next month. So we're going to pilot that here to see what it's like.
That's
I don't
awesome.
know if anybody's doing it. So.
That's really rad. That's really awesome. Can't wait to hear back the reports and see the photos of that.
Sure.
So our next question, and this will go with JR first, is how do you feel the report reflects your own experience in the outdoors, and where does it differ? And you kind of alluded to it a little bit.
I think the report's pretty comprehensive. It covers a lot of different things, and it covers a lot of the struggles that veterans are having, not just with access to the outdoors, but there's so many great programs out there. There's so many great nonprofits in Minnesota doing work for veterans, but they're not really talking to each other. And so connecting those programs together and connecting those communities together to make that larger community is what I've been working to hope to make that larger community, and folks get to talk to each other and build that trust and that those friendships that they're used to having, that they had in the military and maybe they don't have now. As far as differing, I think one thing that I've been working with that I don't know is necessarily reflected in this report as well is displaced veterans. I've been working with a group called Common Bond Communities. They have 50 plus apartments for formerly displaced veterans. And I've been going there on a regular basis since I started doing programming in June of 2021 to create that sense of community. These folks they need that connection to services, but they also need connections to each other. And it's kind of a transitional living. They come from displaced, and then they move into the apartments, and then they move on to having jobs and getting the services that they need. And then another group comes in and kind of fills in from behind. So I think that group doesn't get covered maybe in the same way. And you have to provide a little bit different style of community for them. And so I've been working with that group to provide that.
Thanks, JR. Tammy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I also feel that the report was very well-rounded and brought to light that need of peer support. For many years, I did not identify as a veteran after my transition, and it wasn't really until I started going back to school 10 years after my transition and got involved in the student veteran chapter on campus, and then that kind of like snowballed into Team River Runner. And then 2017, I had the opportunity to go on an all-women veteran trip down the San Juan River. And not only were there 8 women veterans, but the rest of the staff that helped support us along the way were also women. And it was just great camaraderie and connections and just empowering ourselves as we went through the government rapids. And then each night, setting up camp, making dinner, having that team time to each other and sitting around the fire. And then again in the morning, being a part of that team and collecting your things and getting them on the rafts. I think there's also an opportunity for families to be involved. I know I mentioned that in my little quote for the report. My very first Team River Runner experience was with my sister. And I was so glad that she was there with me as my support system, as we both tried something new as whitewater kayaking. It helped alleviate some of my anxiety just to be there and try something new, and knowing that she was there with me. And if things gotten out of control for myself, that her and I could step away and she could help calm me down.
Yeah, thank you all both. Tammy, that's something that we tried to, the family component is something that we tried to echo in the report. We tried to, when we originally started working on it, we had this kind of maybe narrow mind frame, a focus on veteran, but then we were like, we need to expand. So that's why, we keep saying veteran and military community, because it's not just the individual veteran or war fighter. It's the community and the family behind them. So that was a really key thing for us.
Yeah, and transitioning service members like myself who were single when we served and then we came home to our larger family, it's making those new memories and making those memories with their families as we transition and navigate our way through the civilian world. And
then to JR, I just want to give you, I had this phrase, big ups, for your work, with the displaced community. That did come up at the listening sessions. I think that on this iteration of the report, we're trying to write, more of a general focus, but maybe Sherman and y'all can work in the future iterations or so, but that is a lot of people were focused on that, on how can we serve those folks. So I just want to, yes, thank you so much for that work. It's very important. And it's very, we need to have a more specialized report on the ways to help folks and stuff. So my next question for y'all is, and y'all have talked about it throughout, this panel discussion is, but what areas of outdoor SS you see that need the most support? Is it funding? Is it programs? Is it collaboration? What do you see?
So in preparation for this, I made a few notes. For myself, I see that need of employability support. There is a bill in Congress called the GROW Act, which is a pilot program that helps support veterans considering jobs in conservation and resource management and environmental protection. I think that just helps take some of the training and experiences we had in our military, and if that's something we want to continue as our next career, have that opportunity to continue that moving forward. I made some additional notes to some of the recommendations in the access segment. I really enjoyed you mentioning the green spaces and healing nature trails at the CBOCs and the medical centers. I think we can expand that to the regional clinics also. Those who are applying for their VBA benefits, or maybe they're trying to initiate their education benefits, can have that opportunity to step outside, maybe take a little walk on a nice nature trail. I know sometimes when I plan my medical appointments, they're often back to back to back, and I spent a good portion of my day at the medical center. So it's nice to get outside and walk around a little bit off of a sidewalk, maybe sit in a bench and take in the environment. And next, the segment about awareness. There was a mention about connectivity and just spreading awareness about the reasons to be outdoors for veterans. I think also connecting with associations that work with veterans that we don't always consider, such as those school certifying officials on our colleges' campuses, the state and the county directors of VA, those who work with those veterans on those boots on the ground kind of individuals.
I think, and yes to all of those. I think they're all valuable places to work with the programs and the funding. Obviously they'll never turn down funding, but I think grant programs for those organizations that are doing good work would be very beneficial. It's becoming more and more challenging for them as I have conversations with folks like 23rd Veteran or even AARP, finding some funding for veterans that to run veteran specific programming and to provide those support and resources. I tend to partner a lot with a lot of organizations that are nonprofits or that are veterans organizations, because I find I can get a more one-stop shopping kind of environment, where I would run a fishing event and I'll bring in other organizations, veteran organizations, so they can talk about some of the work that they do. I think obviously I talked a little bit about the displaced veterans and the need for some funding and programming and support and resources there. So those are probably some of the big ones that I tend to focus on when I'm looking at creating programming and who can I support, where can I get the most, and I hate to say the word bang for my buck, but where can I capture the most veterans that they can get the support that they need.
Thank you both for your answers. So thoughtful. Tammy, I want to circle back to what you're saying about your healthcare appointments, because that's real, and that's what we were thinking about when in our access conversation. I think you noticed like the one around green spaces is, my wife is a nurse in Everest, Kentucky, and in oncology, and I've gone to the hospital and I grew up going and get allergy shots every week in a very clinical, sterile environment as a kid. And so Yeah, it's a battery of appointments, and you're in. So we wanted to make, we were thinking about like how can you create like that nice healing green so that you can go out, like you said, sit on a bench, enjoy trees, sniff the flowers, go on a walking trail, and stuff. So that's something that's real, and thank you for contextualizing that and sharing from your personal experience about that. So this is like our next question, sort of like a, I don't know, Charlie and Chocolate Factory type question. If resources were not an issue, what would you most likely see to happen that would improve outdoor access for the veteran military community? If resources weren't an issue.
Yeah. I think you would, first of all, state parks, national parks, they would have all of the resources they would need to provide access for veterans of any ability. You're asking, if in a perfect world, if we had all the money that we ever needed, what would you say that we would have? I started to see, as I'm running events out with the communities, I'm starting to see the chairs with the tracks on them at more parks, and I think that's fantastic. I'd love to see more of those. I as far as funding goes, obviously, you'd want to see more intersection between the Veterans Administration and some of the local programs to provide access for those veterans that they're working with. You'd want more veterans at your events. Hopefully that answered your question. I'm not sure, there was a little bit of a disconnect there, but it's hard to think about, if you had all the money that you ever wanted or all the resources that you ever wanted, what would you start with? There's so much to start with. So,
well, anything else you can think of? Like, I mean, in my generation, if you had racks and racks, and everything, anything else?
Maybe making sure that finance and transportation is not a barrier for folks to get access to those outdoor spaces. Maybe more green spaces. I would love to see more green spaces, although the state of Minnesota does a pretty good job of making sure that we've got lots of state parks that are on public transit lines. And I do run a lot of my events that are specific to public transit, so folks can take their public transportation, and I provide information regarding what buses they can take and things like that. But I'd love to see more equipment at parks that folks can rent out. Yeah,
So JR, that's exactly what I was going to mention. I've been to one of our state parks here, and walking up to the trail that leads to the beach, there's like a little mesh box there that everybody puts their sand tools in and stuff like that. So the next family or the next kid or the next individual who wants to play in the sand has some stuff right there, some shovels, some buckets and stuff like that. And I think an equipment share at those access points would be an amazing opportunity to have accessibility. And when we talk about transportation too, sometimes transportation of the equipment to the access point to be able to have an event can be an issue. So being able to maybe having those equipment share opportunities would be great. I think also maybe an app or maybe on the websites themselves for the state parks. And I know the national parks do a very good job at showing the accessibility of trails and maybe the difficulty of trails. So individuals who have physical inabilities like myself, who may not be able to hike like a level 4 for like 3 hours, but have an understanding that, okay, there is a trail that's more difficult, but there's also a trail that is like 1.5 miles, but it's a level 2 and it's a boardwalk, but may have some rocks. Just an understanding and some background to educate the individual to see what they may be suitable for before they get to that green space or that park, so they don't get discouraged and then take a while for themselves to go back and do an activity like that.
Sure.
Thank y'all. Any other things you want to share around this? Like, this is a creative question. Like, anything else you would like to see? Cool.
I just wish I had more time in my own life to be more outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, this was y'all provided like a lot of thought for us. And like I'm sure that Sherman and team will be like making your hotlines bling. And you know, for partnerships and ideas and stuff like that. But Tammy and JR, I just want to thank you so much for your insight and your support for the community. And we really appreciate you. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic to my esteemed colleague, Sherman, who will moderate our Q&A.
Appreciate it, Jerry. So turning here to go to the audience and see if there's any questions, but I thought of one for myself as somebody who's coming to this space fairly recently. What was your first experience with a veteran service organization or just as a veteran outdoors? If you can share that for some of the people that are looking to get started, which we've seen a lot of that in the comments. You know, what was your first time? You know, I heard Tam, you said, you know, it's years later for you. I know for myself, it wasn't right away coming out of the Marine Corps. I'd like to hear some of that from yourself, Tammy, yourself, and then JR, if you can remember as well.
Yeah, so my first experience was that time at Team River Runner. It just happened to be on my 40th birthday, and invited my sister to come along just to do a briefing on whitewater kayaking. Then Jim immediately told us that there was a camping trip that following weekend, and we were more than welcome to join them. We just had to bring our own tent and got to go down the Lehigh River not once, but twice. And it was just built on that. Team River Runner in Philadelphia and this other Southeastern Pennsylvania chapter. Now I'm more involved in the Southern Maryland chapter, but gave me a sense of confidence and pride and camaraderie. Also, like, lifted up my competitive spirit enough for me to participate in the VA Valor Games 2 years in a row, in which I medaled in kayaking, and then learned how to do powerlifting, which I also fell in love with and still pursue to today.
Yeah, it sounds like the river's a gateway drug to all this other. No, I appreciate that, Tammy. And JR, could you hit that next, if you don't mind?
I was stationed in North Carolina, so we had a lot of green spaces close to where I was. When I separated from the military, part of the exit process was having a group, and our group stuck together, and we went to we did the camping trip. Now I'd been spending time outdoors. I've been fortunate living in Minnesota. I spent a lot of time outdoors. I moved to this country in 1982 and was fortunate to have a parent that spent a lot of time outdoors. So I've always been an outdoors person. But the trip that I did with that group post being in the military was a little bit different for me. You disconnect from one team and then you try to find another team. And we still run camping trips with that same group to this day. But that was particularly powerful for me, leaving the military and kind of saying to myself, okay, now what do I do? So.
No, I appreciate that. Sounds like you had an extremely positive separation experience. If you had
it wasn't always, but that particular part of it was. So
yeah, talk for another day. But that's a part of this work though too, is engaging at the earliest opportunity. So you can see the difference between your story and Tammy's story, and probably some things in between. If we have that type of opportunity there. So I appreciate that. And then Jerry, yourself.
Yeah, mine's a little bit unique, like to this question, like it's different. So I grew up as an Army brat, my dad's a combat veteran, my mom was in the Army as well. So I grew up on the base all my life. And so I had the opportunity to work, for MWR as a kid, young adult, morale, welfare, recreation before I got in the Air Force. And so like the job I had was as a recreational aide. So I was checking out kayaks and canoes, mountain bikes, lifeguarding, helping run the water slide, using this old 80s post-Vietnam little patrol boat to go rescue people that had flipped canoes and kayaks and stuff. And then I also worked at an outfitter on the base called Patriot Outfitter, selling stuff like ghillie suits and stuff. And I got my first climbing rope and gree and climbing gear from a dude, a soldier, that he was having a baby, and his wife told him he had to stop rock climbing. So he gave me all his gear and stuff for $100, harness and everything. And I learned you're not supposed to use someone's used climbing rope and all that stuff. And so that was my first experience, working for MWR. Growing up using the MWR's resources, the gear libraries and stuff, and going to the different lake facilities and stuff. And then, having a chance to ultimately help veterans and military communities have fun outdoor experiences. Those are some of the most memorable parts of my life, because I grew up in a time, the global war of terrorism was starting, and, I saw people coming back from war, with limbs blown off and all kinds of stuff like that. And it was just to see people having joy. It was really cool, really, really amazing for me, because you all know how much the military environment can be stressful. So it was awesome to help people, figuratively speaking, let their hair down and have fun. And then subsequently, the River Nexus, years later, got involved with Team River Runner. Team River Runner, shout out.
Yeah, I think we'll have to get some royalties from them after we publish this there. But no, I appreciate that. That's awesome. So the next question here in Simona, I think it probably falls in you and Jerry's warehouse, but I'll start with you. Is, Simona, where do you see this partnership being established or spread, especially given, at SEDC, you see a lot of information come in, produce a lot of reports. And is this unique, or do you see some new opportunities, especially through university partners or other partners in the space?
So to answer your questions, I see it at national level, but also working at state level, just because, like JR was mentioning, right, there are programs that he's implementing that are pilot programs. And like him, probably there are a lot of other organizations and groups that do this across in every state or across the nation. So having this national guided effort that works with state level and local organizations, I think that's very important. And we think in terms of networking or as something simple, conversations and reaching out. But if you think about the scope and size of such a initiative, it will take time and financial effort and support on part of the VA and some other national organizations that can actually support this effort.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Jerry, I'll direct this next question to you. As a person who's obviously worked on this report, but also in private life, marketed and created programming for people in Kentucky and then nationally, what advice would you have for organizations that are running outdoor programs for veterans, and how can they take some small actions or large actions to increase awareness?
Gosh, I didn't know you were going to throw that at me. Gotta get the brain booted. I think it's just thinking about where people are at. When I started Explore Kentucky, my old org, and started my work, I was going to the stereotypical places, the outdoor store, right, to go try to talk to people. But then I realized not everybody, and the people that I want to reach especially from underserved communities, are not necessarily go there. It might not be seen as a space for them. And so I would start going to stuff like, the Hispanic grocery store, the barber shop where I get my hair cut, different community centers, little billboards and stuff, and just try to get where people like from everyday walk of life could see about like a hike, a program that's happening. And then it's also like leveraging like social media. Social media is a powerful tool. We have like TikToks, Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, all these resources. Show people. I think the big thing is show people freaking having fun. That's the big thing. People want to see people smiling. They want to see epic vistas, trails, really cool sights, and people smiling. So that's a big thing. That's how I think that you do it is, don't go to the stereotypical places. Have really amazing visuals, community-driven visuals. And then I think also too is just having some like, I mean, we've done this, but having some listening sessions too, just by talking to people, like how, like, like JR was talking about folks from the displaced community, going to that community, talking to them, how do we reach, folks in your community? How can we serve you? I think that's important, to ask the individual veteran or military member, like how they want to be communicated to is key.
No, I appreciate that. The next question, and then Tammy, I'm queuing you up for this one. Given talking about healthcare space, so what ideas do you have for increasing collaboration between outdoor activity experts and healthcare professionals? And I'll add in there, deep in the report for those that are going to nerd out and go in the appendix, this isn't just like we feel like going outside is a good thing. There's medical studies that it's proven that access to the outdoors increases positive outcomes for veterans. And so this is crucial to have not just the people that want to do activities, but also the people that want to connect with each other, receive that prescription essentially, while they're getting services there. So I kind of answered for myself there too, Tammy, but what opportunities do you see from a learned experience with that?
So bringing that knowledge of the connection between the two to those healthcare professionals as they're beginning their healthcare career on their college campuses, having that conversation with the College of Nursing and the College of Public Health, that this may be a great idea, maybe just to come into the classroom to do one session per their semester to discuss the importance of outdoor experiences and activity and how that can help their patients as they go along. Engage in your local campuses. The medical centers are really good at having town halls, or I know their women veteran coordinators are required to do certain events throughout the year. So connecting with those medical center coordinators on those campuses and say, hey, I have this program. I'd love to come to your audience and talk about it. Or is there some way we can collaborate on something? If they don't have a direct connection for you, they may be able to introduce you to someone that's doing behavioral health, or maybe the local vet center that would have that connection to those transitioning service members. And then just doing what you guys did here with the report, connecting with the university and putting together a sound report and sharing that. As more information like this comes about and journals are written and peer review reports are done, the more it's going to be out in those public spaces for those students and healthcare professionals to read and analyze themselves and put that into practice.
No, I appreciate that. That's tangible solutions of putting boots on the ground, essentially, with knowledge. So that's awesome. JR, this one's directed to you. So essentially, what does your day-to-day look like? What does it look like for you to wake up and engage folks in this community and do all the good work and cool things that you've referenced?
So I have a couple jobs, and one of them, I'm an EMT. I provide free health services for underserved communities. So I'm working with a lot of these communities already in a different capacity. When I'm creating programming like that, I'm looking at how many different groups can I get to collaborate on a program. And give you an example, I run a fishing program 4 times a year. This is Minnesota. We have over 12,000 lakes. So we're going to do some fishing. I will partner with several different organizations and get those participants to come in. And a lot of times it'll be families. I don't want just the participant. I want an entire family. I want the generations of folks that are going to be good stewards of the outdoors, but are also taking care of, that are all part of that family as well. The programming is typically, it's free from all of my participants. So my folks they come and we provide all the equipment, and we get the partners to come in and provide water or snacks or things like that. And then we'll also provide tabling opportunities for them, because a lot of the programs that I'm partnering with are specific, especially when I'm doing veteran specific programming, they're going to be organizations that the veterans can benefit from their programming as well. So then the veterans are getting kind of a one-stop shop, kind of a workshop of different organizations that are, while they're having fun. And so hopefully that answered your question. Does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense.
Okay.
Other than the fact that you haven't brought me up there to go fishing yet, but
I invited you up here.
You're right. Report time is done, so I'll be doing some experiential learning, hopefully very soon. So one of the last questions before we transition here is we had a audience member ask, as a recent retiree, how can I get more involved? And I'm going to tap that to Jerry, but before just saying, just as a recent retiree, this can go to everybody, but statistically right now, we've pivoted to where not only our respondents, but the veteran population being served are Gulf War era veterans right now. So the leaders in this space that have time and have experience that are going to help the generation of veterans like ourselves or yourself. So I appreciate tagging that in there because that's important for what we found as well. And then Jerry, would you like to just talk about generally involvement and how people can get tapped in?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's people just come with your ideas. What is your idea? The sky's the limit. Sorry, that sounds so cliche, but when I was in college, I saw the local American Legion. They had in Campbellsville, Kentucky, they had empty space. The American Legion room wasn't being used as much. And so they're let's turn one of our rooms into a study space for veterans at the university. And that's how I got connected to the American Legion. Because I would go there because I was trying to get not distracted from at school. There's other ideas. I worked in Glasgow, Kentucky with the Veterans of Foreign Wars there, the chapter, or the post, sorry, to help develop a kayak trail that starts from their property and ends at city property. So it's just coming with your ideas. A lot of these folks, especially a lot of American Legion, VFW, DAV, like Sherman said, they're in this generational transition of, from Vietnam Vietnam era veterans to Gulf War and then post 9/11 veterans. They're looking for ideas to keep these organizations relevant and keep membership rolls up and stuff. So that's what I would say to do.
Thank you, Jerry. So I think for Q&A purposes, I know I couldn't get to everybody's questions. Appreciate having an active audience here, showing the engagement that we need to have already. Before we transition to the next slide and just talk about some of the next steps we're going to take as the Sierra Club, just want to extend gratitude to JR, Tammy, Simona. I know half of y'all I'm going to see again. Simona, I'll find my way to come to Kentucky somehow. And just really appreciate y'all's time and perspective. I know I learned something today, so I appreciate that. And it's cool serving with you in this capacity as well.
Thanks.
So if we can go to the next slide, please. So appreciate it. So again, responsibility for us to continue this work, right? So we're going to talk about a couple of the next steps to take this report and turn it into action. How this slide's organized right now, you'll see, the top 3 bullet points are what we're calling our hero recommendations. Generally, it's just injecting resources into the dozens of systems that you heard about today and those that we haven't addressed there. What I wanted to make sure that we hit on was, the pictures and what this looks like at the Sierra Club. If you look at your top left, that's happens to be a Team River Runner outing in Washington, D.C. with a student veteran who's also a fellow at the Sierra Club now, talking about building those community connections. If you look below that, middle left, that's Minnesota in a fishing trip in a partnership with a non-VSO, but an organization that works with veterans as well, in partnership with JR, kind of non-traditional there. I saw some comments about access. If you look bottom left, that's using that's in Loma Prieta chapter, where we have more of a traditional partnership with the Sierra Club Military Outdoors chapter, partnered with the VA, giving lessons on hiking with poles. Then can go into stories for all of these, but top right, that's in Alaska. That's just this past week with an organization called Alaska Healing Hearts. It takes kids to an island, military families, to go camping in cabins out there. Bottom middle right is Sierra Club with the University of Georgia, and a now executive director of a VSO, Vita Barnett there, who was, created an event that's kind of out of the box, where, we're talking about heirloom vegetables and cooking and traditional cooking methods, and creating an affinity group for the women that you see there. And then bottom right, you see down in Florida, more traditional partnerships, again, with Wounded Warrior Project, First Coast YMCA, and a group of military and their families in the swamp. So to me, that's awesome, and that's what we do, and just replicating, those efforts and communicating those is success. But there's, from using the Sierra Club tagline of, enjoy, explore, and protect, a couple of things that came out of this conversation and that we know moving forward. From an enjoyment standpoint, yes, it's good to go in the outdoors, but how are we capturing these innovative collaborations? How are we showing how, these specific partnerships, when resourced, bring joys to different groups of veterans or people who have served in the military, or those who serve those people? From an explorer standpoint, as you can see from these illustrations, it's how do we create these environments where we, these people only show up if it's equitable and ethical, and that guides what our solutions are. And so that's at the forefront of what we do. And that, to me, that's how you enable people to explore. And then from a protection standpoint, that's where we talk about cultivation for us, because for us, we're just creating pathways. So that's for the military community, administrative partners, who many of which are in here, and then really looking towards the next Congress. We heard about some of the, not just recommendations in the report, but we know the Explore Act is out there right now. We know the Explore Act has the MVP Act embedded into it, which creates equitable access, more access for veterans, specifically those who have disabilities or need accommodations. And so we'll be working concurrently, to help the task force implement some of these things, which we know that their report is coming out in September. And so on a positive side note, when it seems like, well, this is a hard problem to tackle, right? Anytime you hear a veteran, you usually hear, something about healing, or have, hear almost the VA in a negative context sometimes, and joy rarely comes into it. We know that, these things are possible because, for me, just in this last couple of years, and looking at three things. One, from an inclusivity standpoint, today I don't go to Fort Bragg, I go to Fort Liberty. The fact of that existence alone, creates a more inclusive environment, and took people at the DOD, people on the ground, and the civilian populations as leaders to come up with the solution. We know that the VA itself, with the peer specialist program, creating peer-to-peer support, and kind of what Tammy said is like having people educated on the ground with the resources to talk about how to infuse those. We can see that happening with the peer specialists at the VA. How do we grow that and make the outdoors more of a part of that offering that they already provide? And then third, we alluded to homelessness, and, one of the biggest success stories from the VA and partners over the past 2 decades is homelessness is down 52% for veterans since 2010. There's a lot of reasons for it, a lot of cool collaborations, a lot of connections and communities, but it comes down to the infusion of resources, whether that's dollars, whether that's creating spaces, and whether that's the expansion of spaces that exist, like Vicor adding the DoD and the VA there. And so for us, we know that through this combination of successes that have had, the next step in building block of that is to getting people to enjoy the outside. And again, that's not grounded in just going to have fun or some type of second service for people. That's for the knowledge that creates more resilient communities that are in alignment in what we are trying to do with cultivating pathways for the military community. So I appreciate that. For those that are out here in North Georgia with me in Atlanta, hopefully you can join me with a hike with the Vet Space and a Humble Warrior come Veterans Day. For the rest of those y'all are getting involved in your local communities, we have chapters ranging from Alaska to Florida to Connecticut to Los Angeles. And if we don't have one near you, we'll find a way to get connected. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate y'all joining us today. And look forward to seeing you on the other side. Thank you.